Welcome, everyone, to the CDO Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President of Stanhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. Working with the CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ Symposium, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers. Today, I'd like to introduce Matt Fornito, who is the head of artificial intelligence at Trace3. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
It's a pleasure. And if I may, I'd like to start with a couple of background questions to get our audience a little bit more familiar with both yourself and Trace3.
Sure.
I noted when I was doing some research of your background and your bio, and you have got an outstanding track record of AI, deep learning, machine learning, predictive analytics, data science. In fact, your entire career has been in and around AI. What I'd like to start with is, what has drawn you to this field?
Well, that's a great question, and I appreciate the kind words. For me, I was always a math nerd growing up and tried to always integrate myself in doing new things, and I always loved people. And in high school, I learned about this intersection of industrial organizational psychology, so the psychology of work, which really helps understand how people operate, especially in the workplace. And the quantitative facets are really driving that. And so what I really liked is that after graduate school, I was brought on as a data scientist and started my career trajectory there. And I've taken this unique approach, I think, that's a little bit different than most people who've come from a data science background, where my understanding or conceptualization is that data science and AI and all this information we collect is really the latent facets of people's attitudes, behaviors, and cognitions. And so I was able to essentially leverage data and these giant algorithms that allow for heavy compute of that data to really understand how people operate better.
And just before we come on air, I noticed you were talking about, you also did some acting and improv in a prior life. So I'm sure that also helps you in dealing with the math and especially the people problem as well.
Yeah, it's a bit fun. And I think being in a consultative role really allows me to try and strategize and think of new approaches all the time, which I think goes in line with that.
And speaking of consultative approaches, maybe you can provide a little background on what attracted you to join Trace3 as their head of artificial intelligence.
Sure. So Trace3 is this established technology provider. We have a strong portfolio of consulting services, especially in cloud security and data intelligence. And my boss, Tony Olzak, he's the chief technology officer. We've had these conversations for a few years. And Trace3 reached an apex point where they were having numerous conversations with customers, and especially in the Fortune 500 sphere, around artificial intelligence and how to build and integrate that. And we decided together, essentially, that it would be a great time for me to jump on into this role to build a practice or accelerate the practice that had already been going on and really help lead these conversations and help our customers in that journey.
It seems that there's been an explosion around this movement towards AI, deep learning, machine learning, and data science, predictive analytics, call it what you will. And in order to kind of summarize that, when we mention AI moving forward for our listeners, we'll mean deep learning, machine learning, data science, predictive analytics under the umbrella of AI. Yep. But can you maybe give your opinion on why you think there's a push now towards AI and its components?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. If you look back at deep learning really starting to initially take off in the 1950s, we've ended up having two winters, right, where deep learning and these neural networks weren't able to be leveraged, at least not significantly. And we reached an apex point due to parallel processing and GPUs. So if we look at these models that were already being able to be built or leveraged mathematically, but weren't able to be used conceptually in practice because there wasn't the computational power there, that was a gap. The other piece is that until the early 2000s, with the advent of big data and collecting more and more data, there wasn't really a deep intrinsic need for deep learning. Now, there was obviously statisticians, and they were still doing basic statistical frameworks. But I think the ability for us to leverage large swaths of data, especially unstructured data, and push those out onto parallel processing such as GPUs, FPGAs, et cetera, really has accelerated the advent of AI.